What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and welcome to our daily show where we discuss the fourth stimulus check update, everything going on with stimulus and upcoming stimulus and past the stimulus that you might be eligible for, as well as what's going on in the world today. As you know, what's going on today is the big trial of Derek Chauvin over the death of George Floyd. In fact, the jury is out for deliberation, although the defense was just pushing for a mistrial.
All right, a couple of things. I know the defense was in the process, I think, of making expressing a concern or an objection to counsel's argument belittling the defense. Is that what I correctly perceived that objection? I think we dealt with it sufficiently during the objections during the rebuttal, so there will be no additional instruction in that regard.
I do believe that it constitutes prosecutorial misconduct and is potentially basis for grounds for a mistrial.
Okay, I think the use of the word nonsense is what you're talking about originally.
Originally, Your Honor, but then in rebuttal there were repeated comments about how we were, and implications that we were shading was one example, that we were creating Halloween stories was another example, that these were stories, and that was a repeated comment. Stated that we misrepresented facts and put words into Dr. Baker's mouth, that we made several statements that they put forth as stories. After the court instructed him to stop using the word stories, he clarified that it's just fabricated facts. And so there were multiple references to that, that we were shading the truth.
The jury is out deliberating the trial right now, and my wife and I, we were listening to the defense arguments and the prosecutor arguments today. The defense had a 2.5, almost 3-hour closing statement where they tried to basically rebut everything. And me being a realist, I listened to both sides trying to give it an objective decision on what I would do if I was a jury. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. But the defense had some really convincing arguments, and that's why sometimes these cases can go either way, because the defense basically had a rebuttal for everything. And, they have to get past that reasonable doubt in a trial like this. For example, the defense said that the Minneapolis Police Department allows the use of a knee on a person's head and neck area. It's allowed. I think that's something that needs to be changed in the future, if not already happening possibly in parts of the country. But if you look at just that one point, you're like, ooh, that's not good for the prosecution. And then the defense also went on to talk about how, well, this could be a contributing factor, and his heart could be a contributing factor, and his lungs could be, and the possible use of drugs could be a contributing factor. And they basically had well thought out arguments for almost everything. And if you're a juror, really, one of those things could stick in your mind, and you could be like, well, yeah, he was allowed to use that. But I think that the biggest thing that stuck with me is when the prosecution was able to rebut that. And they basically say, we've had 45 different witnesses in this trial, 45. But possibly the most important one is the 46th witness. That's right, there's a 46th witness. And the 46th witness is common sense. And he basically said that you could go on and rebut anything or have an opinion about anything or show this, that, and that, or why something was done. But at the end of the day, what does common sense tell you? Common sense tells you that George Floyd wouldn't have died if it weren't for the knee being on his neck and head. And any other circumstance, he wouldn't have passed away that day if it weren't for what happened. And I think that that is why it should ultimately end in a guilty verdict. Now, remember, they're not looking for first or second degree murder. I also seen the defense arguing that, and they showed the footage. So what's interesting now in these cases is they have police footage. They have footage from 4 different officers, and they showed how they tried to get him in the car before the whole knee incident happened. And they tried to get him in the car, and he wouldn't go in the car, and they couldn't get him in the car. And of course, the defense is arguing that. And honestly, I could see that if this could be a hung jury, which would mean if they can't get everybody to agree on one side or the other, I could see that happening because both sides made very convincing cases. Again, ultimately, I think that he is guilty because at the end of the day, you go with common sense that if he didn't have the knee on his head, would he still be here? And the answer is yes. But when you look at the defense's arguments, man, they make some very convincing arguments from the other side. And remember, if they get just one juror to say, "Well, I think for a reasonable doubt that he didn't kill him. There was all these other contributing factors. They tried to get him in the car. He wouldn't go in the car, and they're allowed to use that knee hold, which is crazy. I think that this will set the precedence going forward that they need to get rid of that." But I think that ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a hung jury and we don't see a guilty or not guilty verdict because they got to convince the whole jury one way or the other. And I think that ultimately, if it does go one way, I think he'll end up being guilty because I think it'd be hard pressed to say he's not guilty. But man, it's a very tough situation. If you listen to the trial, before you listen to the trial, I thought, for sure he's guilty, for sure he's guilty. But when you listen to the defense, man, they got some very well thought out arguments saying, well, the knee is allowed. It's allowed by the police department. It's allowed by the state. It's an accepted use for the police department, which is, again, that needs to be changed. And you see them try to put him in the car and he won't go. But then you really got to go back to common sense. Well, that doesn't mean that you can kill somebody. And I think that's why ultimately at the end of the day, I think that that's where my opinion lands is that he wouldn't be dead if it weren't for the knee. And I think that's kind of my ultimate decision. Let me know your thoughts. This is a very controversial issue. And really, politics is entering the courtroom in this case. This is why this is going to be an unprecedented trial, especially when we get the verdict. And Maxine Waters, Democratic representative, we've been talking about her and her comments, whether or not she was inciting a riot. And that actually entered the courtroom. And we've actually had two different incidences since Maxine Waters kind of made these comments, as you can see here. I'm not sure if this one is entirely related, but this one definitely seems to be. Shots fired at National Guard members in Minneapolis, 2 injured in a drive-by shooting. And well, the judge and the case is actually being affected by Maxine Waters' comments, with the judge actually saying that Maxine Waters' comments may actually cause the case to be overturned.
That you wanted to memorialize, but also a new motion based on events this weekend. Mr. Nelson.
Correct, Your Honor. Your Honor, as the court is aware and as prior to coming into court this morning for closing arguments, we had an in-chambers discussion about events of this weekend, specifically referencing that an elected official, United States congressperson, was making what I interpreted to be, and what I think are reasonably interpreted to be, threats against the sanctity of the jury process, threatening and intimidating a jury, demanding that if there's not a guilty verdict, that there would be further problems, Your Honor. And given the fact that this jury has not been sequestered, it has been my position all along throughout the course of this case that this jury should have been sequestered at the outset.
I'm aware of the media reports. I'm aware that Congresswoman Waters was talking specifically about this trial and about the unacceptability of anything less than a murder conviction, and talk about being confrontational. But you can submit the press articles about that. This goes back to what I've been saying from the beginning. I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function. I think if they want to give their opinions, they should do so in a respectful and in a manner that is consistent with their oath to the Constitution, to respect a co-equal branch of government. Their failure to do so, I think, is abhorrent, but I don't think it has prejudiced us with additional material that would prejudice this jury. They have been told not to watch the news. I trust they are following those instructions, and that there is not in any way a prejudice to the defendant beyond the articles that we're talking specifically about the facts of this case. A congresswoman's opinion really doesn't matter a whole lot.
Now, House Speaker and Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi is defending Representative Maxine Waters, Democratic representative, over her get more confrontational if there's not a guilty verdict remarks. And well, the Republicans are not happy with this at all. Controversial Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has introduced a resolution to expel Maxine Waters from Congress. And it's safe to say that Republicans are very unhappy, mostly because I think Republicans are, they think the same thing is what happened to former President Donald Trump. He incited this insurrection, which is basically what Maxine Waters is saying. She's saying if there's not a guilty verdict, you need to go and protest and be in the streets. And we've now had this drive-by shooting with injuries that possibly could be because of her remarks. And well, here's what good old Mitch is saying.
She said, quote, "We're looking for a guilty verdict. Like somebody window shopping or ordering off a menu. She's looking for a guilty verdict. If that verdict is not reached," the Congresswoman said, "demonstrators should not only stay in the street, we've got to get more active, get more confrontational, make sure that they know we mean business." It's harder to imagine anything more inappropriate than a member of Congress flying in from California to inform local leaders, not so subtly, that this defendant had better be found guilty or else there will be big trouble in the streets. Again, so much of our nation's quest for civil rights and equal justice has been the fight to get rid of extrajudicial violence, to get rid of rigged trials where the outcome was molded by public sentiment or angry mobs. It's beyond the pale for a sitting member of the United States Congress to look at what happened last summer and imply there should be some kind of a sequel if a legal case does not unfold as she thinks it should. Now, just a few hours after those comments, two members of the National Guard who were on site in Minneapolis keeping the peace were targeted in a drive-by shooting. Thankfully, neither was seriously injured, but let's hope it doesn't take an injury or a fatality to remind politicians that their words actually have consequences.
Yeah, like I said, this is quickly blowing up into a huge situation that could be larger than the trial itself, which is really, really hard to believe. Let me know your thoughts on this, and I think that this could be getting even bigger. So we'll have to see. By the way, the Washington, D.C. has requested already National Guard presence ahead of the Chauvin verdict. So at least they're going to be somewhat prepared. On stimulus, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau on Monday unveiled a rule ordering debt collectors to inform tenants about their rights under a federal eviction ban if they've been unable to pay rent during the pandemic. The rule would order any third-party debt collector, including attorneys, attempting to collect owed rent on behalf of a landlord to tell tenants that they may be protected from eviction underneath the CDC eviction moratorium. Debt collectors would have to inform tenants about their rights under the CDC ban no later than when the renters receive an eviction notice. This comes as a rental eviction ban is still in effect, yet evictions are happening all across the United States in all 50 states. And it's a big thing because landlords are finding loopholes to evict renters all across the nation. And that's why if you are thinking you might be evicted or you have a family member or friend, look into it because there's a lot of details and it's different by state. You may need to make a partial payment. You may need to give a written statement. There's a CDC document, an eviction document that you can sign and give to your landlord and keep a copy of that gives you the eviction protection or at least part of it. And then ultimately at the end of the day, you may have to go to court and defend yourself. And a lot of courts have been overruling the eviction moratorium. And it's just a tricky situation. This also comes as there's $45 billion from the third stimulus check package and $25 billion from the second stimulus check package for mortgage assistance, rental assistance, and some money for property tax assistance and utility assistance. Yet 20 states in the United States have not even started their programs for mortgage assistance and rental assistance from the second or the third stimulus check package. 20 different states haven't even started. And honestly, there's a lot of bad information. You could call the phone number 211. Sometimes you'll get an operator that tells you that there's nothing available when really there is, and they just maybe don't know about it. And really, the rental eviction and the mortgage protection and the rental assistance and mortgage assistance is difficult to get. But if you can get it, if you look into it and you apply for it, you could get 12 months of your rent paid for free. In some cases, even more than that. Probably the easiest ways to do this are to call the phone number 211. But remember, you might get an operator who has no idea what you're talking about. So I suggest calling several different days, several different times, or going to Google and typing in your county rental assistance, so Summit County rental assistance, and your state, Ohio rental assistance, or New York rental assistance, Texas rental assistance, and trying to find these several different programs that are available in your area. Also, at the end of this video, I'll link you to a recent video I did, which has about 15 other types of programs that could give you assistance, give you basically stimulus money, rental assistance, just assistance for you to pay. That we had a recent viewer compile a list of this. It's a very good video. If you haven't watched that yet, I'll link you to that at the end of this video. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss out on updates on the upcoming round of stimulus as well as what's going on in the world today. Don't miss an episode because we cover different things in different episodes. New videos come out every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our next video will be 11 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. So don't miss it. Don't forget to tune in. You can click this video over here, which is our newest stimulus check video. And this video is about those 10 to 15 other programs for stimulus that you might not know about. You should click this and watch this if you haven't yet. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.